Have you ever heard of the term, there is plenty money in so-so city, just go there, you will hammer? Or something like, you're in so-so city, you're a big girl or you're a big boy, you're making money, come and send me money, you know. If they haven't said that to you, that means you're the one doing it to someone, because it definitely has to go around. Boy, oh boy, today's conversation is two sides of one very familiar coin, and I am talking about the issue of urbanization. Urbanization is like, you know, the mini jackpot, because we're talking about it in the local context. So people live in a state to another state because they think that there is a greener pasture there. Let me officially welcome you to today's episode of Fafanua Afrika. Now, this is a youth-based, conversational and enlightening show where in less than 60 minutes, we take you through the topical, the trending issues across Africa that affect the youth, and of course, we prefer possible solutions to the challenges that the youths may face in their everyday lives. And today, like I said, we're talking about urbanization, but not from the angle you will expect. We're narrowing it down to the reason some rural or semi-urban regions are getting emptier and the urban areas are getting overpopulated. And we'll of course be using Nigeria, a West African country in Africa, as a case study, especially Lagos State. Now, urbanization, like I said earlier, is just like the mini jackpot. You know, jackpot basically means, in case you're not Nigerian, it means people are migrating to other countries for greener pastures. But this is in a national context. My name is Blessings Mosugu, and of course, I'm your delectable host on the show. So sit tight and let's take you through 1 hour of bliss. Now, urbanization refers to the process of growth and development of cities and towns, which leads to an increase in the proportion of the population living in urban areas. Urbanization is a worldwide phenomenon and has resulted in significant social, economic, and environmental changes. Some of the positive impacts of urbanization include improved infrastructure, increase in economic opportunities, and greater access to healthcare and education. However, the rapid urbanization can also lead to overcrowding, traffic congestion, air and water pollution, and social segregation. If you've been to Lagos, you know what I'm talking about. Furthermore, urbanization can lead to the loss of agricultural land, natural habitats, and sensitive ecological systems. This can have a significant impact on environmental sustainability, as well as contribute to climate change. Governments, non-governmental organizations, and urban planners can work to mitigate the negative impact of urbanization by pursuing sustainable and equitable urban development strategies. This includes initiatives like promoting public transportation, investing in green spaces and renewable energy sources, and also fostering inclusive communities. But like I said, we're looking at it from another angle, which is the exact reason why people leave their state to other states. Joining me on this conversation today, I have the honor of introducing first Eze Emmanuel, Brand Communications and Marketing Leader at Advancio Interactive Ltd from Nigeria. Thank you, Eze, for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure. You look dapper, by the way.
Thank you so much.
All right, we also have joining us Gracious Akande, a writer and editor also in Nigeria. Thank you, Gracious, for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here.
You have a beautiful smile.
Thank you.
Okay, and finally, last but not the least, we have Ephraim Isong, ESQ, Principal State Counsel, Ministry of Justice from Akwa Ibom State. Thank you, Ephraim. Ephraim will be joining us very shortly, by the way. We don't have his audio yet, but hopefully he can join us before we go too deep into the conversation. So once again, thank you, Emmanuel, and thank you, Gracious, for joining us. Now, this is a conversation that has been long overdue. A lot of people have had issues, you know. Now, like I said, we're looking at it from two sides, right? We're looking at the reason why people even travel in the first place to other states. You see people just up and leave their states. You know, they're going to other states for greener pastures. And a lot of times we can attribute that to Nollywood movies or social media, but we'll get to that, right? So we're looking at the reasons, and we're also looking at the effects that, you know, family and society have. Now, sometimes people travel and then the people they left behind will feel like, oh, you're in social state, you're making money. They don't care what you're doing. They just feel like because you're there, you have to be picking money from somewhere or plucking money from a tree. And that's what we're talking about today. So before we go deep into this, I would like for us to talk about the concept of urbanization in itself. So, Emmanuel, when we talk about urbanization, what comes to mind?
Yeah, for me, what comes to mind is, people basically moving for opportunities, seeking opportunities beyond their immediate environment or locality. Quite a number of my dad also, thanks to him, I'm considered a Lagos boy because he also left his place of birth because there was no growth, there was no opportunities for him as a young man. So he came to Lagos. It was rough, because it was not planned, but we're grateful for that. So that's one of the reasons why urbanization is actually quite an interesting subject, right? It's common today because, and then if you look at the context of Nigeria, development is not, is not equitable across the different states. So we have about 36 states in Nigeria, and then you have maybe 6 that is, fully urbanized, where you have good road, hospitals compared to the other 30 states. So that's basically it for me.
Okay, thank you for that, Emmanuel. And Gracious, what would you say are the reasons why people leave? I mean, Emmanuel has hinted on some, but what would you say the reasons, and what would you say are the triggers? Why do you think people just up and leave, believing that other states are better than theirs?
Thank you so much for that. I would say that primarily, like you earlier mentioned, opportunities. Everyone is looking for how to, get better, improve their quality of life, their standard of living. And so most times, or majority of the time, people are just seeking better opportunities not just for themselves, but for their families, usually based on stories that they've heard about that place. So, go to Lagos, it's the land of money. Just like people are jackpotting now, right? It's just because of opportunities where they feel or see or they've heard that, life can be better, and then that's why they are usually moving. So that would be one of the major reasons why urbanization is really rampant.
All right, thank you for that. I mean, I personally would say that I'm currently in Lagos, Nigeria, and I would say that to some extent, I believed the narrative that there was money in Lagos. Now, I didn't believe that you just come and carry Ghana must go and be picking money from the floor. That was what they tried to make us believe. But I mean, there was this subtle notion that once you come to Lagos, all your fears and troubles are over. And then it just feels as though you can make all the money you need to make. All you have to do is just go out. In fact, they don't even emphasize on working hard, just go and make money. And then once you get to Lagos, people are now expecting you. And now the reason we're talking about Lagos is because that is our case study. There are many other states across the African continent, because this is, of course, an African, Pan-African show where we try to look at every state, every country on the continent. So we're using Lagos as a case study, and I would say that I was a victim of this, narrative. But that said, we'll come back to this conversation. But since it's a youth-based show, we usually like to get opinions of the youth across Africa regarding this topic. So we have, some clips on the youths talking about urbanization, and we'd like to take a look at that. So we'll pause to take a look at that, and then we'll continue the conversation on the back end.
Urban area, we have so many factors, we have so many activities that you still need to adapt to it. Like getting a work is not easy to get a work in the urban area, and getting a work right, the cost of living, like getting what you get for like 500 naira in the urban area. In the rural area, you may get it for like 100 naira or 150 naira.
People, they make money anywhere. It's not only Lagos. So you guys just depend on your mentality and depend on what you want, what you want go to make the money. Guys, so it's not by going Lagos to make money. I make my own money, but it's not based on say till I get to Lagos before I make money. I make my money before I even come to this school in Lagos. So
yes, there are opportunities in the urban part because it's more developed than the rural part. But that doesn't still make it a necessity for someone to move ahead from the rural area down to the urban region, right? You can still actually make do with what you have wherever you are. However, there's this saying, when you move around to the likes mind or people that have this higher perception of life, you actually have that more good within that area. So I'd say some extent, yes, the urban rural area is still, a very big field to come into and make it. However, yes, there are limitations in the other rural area. However, it's still based off of you, your perception on how to make yourself better and actually add value to yourself. Yes, sir.
One, do not relocate or do not move without having a job or a plan or what you're going to do in that location. So I know at times you want to take risks and follow our dreams or the next big thing. Be like me, personally, I will not move without having a plan. So I was born and brought up in Lagos, and I schooled in Delta State. But after my tertiary education, I went to Lagos for law school, and I knew I didn't want to go out my parents' house. So immediately I got a job. I stayed in my sister's place, went from my friend's place, and then after a while I got my own place that came with my job. Then moved to Asaba, and from Asaba moved to Abuja. Now every move I made, I always had something I was going to the other city or state for. So do not move around jobless, because my guy, you'll be hungry. Hunger will come. Do not move without thinking of sorting out where you're going to stay. Don't just go with the flow. Plan, because if you're not ready for surprises.
Well, those were the various opinions of the youth across Africa regarding urbanization. I would like for us to talk about that last point that, the lady who spoke last made. But before that, I think we have Ephraim now. I had earlier introduced Ephraim as the Principal State Counsel, Ministry of Justice, Akwa Ibom State. Thank you, Ephraim, for joining us.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. And we still have Emmanuel and, of course, Gracious. Thank you for staying with us and being a lovely guest. Okay, so we're still talking about urbanization. And like I said, I want us to pick up on the last point that she made, and that is moving without having plans. And this is me trying to play the devil's advocate. So I'll start with you, Ephraim. How do you move to a place that you know nothing about, you've only heard about, and you've heard about the prospect? How do you move to places like that with tangible plans? What do you even know that you're going there to do? A lot of people try to, just try their luck, like they say, trial and error. If I succeed, I succeed. If I fail, I know where I'm coming from. A lot of people, like, I think it's Yorubas that say that if you don't know where you're going, at least you know where you're coming from. So a lot of people don't necessarily go to these places with plans. And if we say that they should plan before they go, what are they planning towards? Because they only know that these places have opportunities. They don't know what they're going there to do. They don't know if they're going to learn new skills, or even if the skills they have will come handy when they get there. So what do you have to say about that?
Okay, I think that's a very good point, because it's a risky thing to move to a new environment without a plan, no matter how great the opportunities are. So I think one of the ways you can plan is to, first of all, maybe find out if you have someone there. Accommodation is key. We all know that, shelter is one of the basic needs of a man. So you must have where you're going to stay, so that you don't move to, example, Lagos and go and start staying under the bridge. And you must have an idea of what you're going to achieve, what you're going to do. So, for example, I'll use Abuja. I lived in Abuja for a while, but most times, if you're a musician, or if you're an artist or a fashion designer and you're in Abuja, you might need to move to Lagos, because that's where they have the structure. So when I say what you're going to do, you might need to make the adequate contacts before you get there. You might need to make the adequate connections and get some assurances of people saying, okay, come, we are going to put you through, so that you don't move, blindsided. Because if you go blindsided out of desperation or excitement, sometimes it leads to frustration. You see people sleeping outside or staying a long time in a place without having something tangible to do. So it's a very risky move. You have to make contacts, make sure you have where to stay, what you're going to do, and temporarily, maybe before what you're expecting clicks, how you are going to survive. So maybe you already have a skill that would apply in the location you're trying to move to. Like if you're even Japan, maybe you might know how to make hair, or know how to, cook, or something that will keep you providing your basic everyday needs until you get what exactly you need. So that's just my take on, moving with a plan. It's very important to have a strategy when moving.
All right, thank you so much, Ephraim. I saw Emmanuel nodding his head, and I think, okay, my own question to you is going to be different. But first of all, I would like for us to classify these reasons. Don't forget, I had asked earlier that what are the reasons that people move to urban areas, move to other cities that they think are better than theirs. And there are three things that I would like for us to classify them under. Now, we have testimonials, right? That's the people who have gone and seen and, you know, are now saying things about it. We also have movies, Nollywood movies. They've played a huge role, like it or not, in you know, leading to massive urbanization. And of course, in this age and time, there's social media. Social media is primarily the cause of so many things that are happening right now, and urbanization is one of them. So I would like for us to divide these three things and talk about them, maybe not extensively, but at least touch base with them. Now, we have testimonials, we have movies, and we have social media. Now, for testimonials, right, I've seen and I've heard so many people who truthfully come to Lagos. Don't forget, we're still using Lagos as the case study. They come to Lagos, and in the first few, because they don't have plans, you know, we just talked about moving without having plans. Because they didn't have plans, in the first few weeks, they're either sleeping under the bridge or squatting with someone or something. And as a result of that, maybe like, let's say 60, 50, 40% of them eventually become successful. And then their stories are that when I started by sleeping under the bridge. So that alone sort of creates a sadistic approach towards urbanization. So some people by default feel like when they come to Lagos and they sleep under the bridge, it's just a sign that they'll be successful. I mean, like it or not, it happens, right? Where you're sleeping under the bridge, you're suffering. There is no guarantee that you will be successful. But because so person has done it and is now successful, I mean, this person slept under the bridge, this musician slept under the bridge, this actor slept under the bridge, it's just for a while. I will sleep under the bridge and I'll be successful. So there is that. Let's start with that. Emmanuel, what do you have to say about that?
Okay, thank you very much for that, right? So I actually do agree that movies actually contribute a larger percentage of like people's perception about moving to urban cities. I remember back in the days when I visited, because I attended the University of Ife. I remember I went to my uncle's house and I saw my cousins. And then the first thing that they told me is that in Nigerian movies, they say, if you get to Lagos, they say, shine your eyes. Is that true? That in Lagos is this, that Lagos is really big, you can get missing and things like that. So, and that perception came from movies, right? So, movies actually do contribute to the perception of people who want to come to Lagos. What I want to say about what you mentioned is, you know, we all have, so I believe in destiny, right? So what works for A, B might not work for you, right? So I remember in school too, funny thing, right? Every time I try to ask somebody, that's when I get caught. So I really do not like asking anybody in the exam hall. So we have our destinies, right? And then God has ordained a particular way for us to succeed. So because somebody came to Lagos, slept under the bridge, does not mean that that's the same path you follow. So your own path might be, if you try it, it might be worse for you. So it's best to always have a plan. And I'm somebody, right? I do not believe that if you're going to move to a new city, do not just have a plan A, have a B and C.
Even D if possible.
And even D if possible, right? So if you're because I've seen people will tell you, oh, come to Lagos. Anytime you're ready to come to Lagos, I'm going to house you. And then they now come, you now hear stories. Oh, my wife just put to bed. We're going through some finances. You can't stay with us anymore, right? So it's important to, you know, understand where you're going to. Be sure that where you're going to, you know, like the other speaker mentioned, you know, have a skill, you know, not just, you know, so people can be genuinely, you know, helpful. But at the same time, there's only a limit to where they can help you to. So, you know, your friend, you don't know how much of your friend is until you start living with them, they start feeding you. So it's important that you have a plan before you move, right? So testimonials, they contribute a good amount, you know, especially from people who you know and trust. But not all testimonials are true. So some people, you know, they want you to come. They'll tell you that so that you live and become worse off where you're going to just because they're not happy, or they want you to suffer the same way they suffered. You know, and then social media contributes a lot today. I think everybody has that belief already, you know, if you're not and which is true in some cases, not in all cases, right? Like he mentioned about musicians, there's a popular artist right now, he used to be big, he was big in Abuja, he was an underdog in Abuja, but today he's big, he's known everywhere in Nigeria today, you know, thanks to moving to Lagos and understanding, your craft, and then knowing that there's something for you here. So, but people without a plan, he had a plan. He knew that he knows his base, but he knows that Lagos is where the money is, where the entertainment is. It's like the capital of entertainment in Nigeria and even Africa, if I may say so. Thank you very much for that.
All right, thank you so much for that, Emmanuel. I mean, that was extensive and quite comprehensive as well. Now, Gracious, I would like for us to also look at this from another angle. We see a lot of youths who leave their hometown with no intention to go back. Only very few of them do so. A lot of them just go for visiting to see their parents, and then they're back to, where they relocated to. Now, that brings the question, what exactly is the benefit to the rural areas that they're leaving behind? Now, they're leaving the rural areas to the urban areas. We can liken that to, the general jackpot thing, where a lot of people go to Canada, and sometimes, you go to school, you become better off. Although even that, a lot of them don't intend to come back, but some of them actually do come back. And then because of the knowledge they've been able to get, they are now adding to the system, making the system better, improving if it's the health sector, the the entertainment sector, education, anything. But it's not exactly the same for the rural areas, because when you leave where you grew up, right, for you it's like there's nothing in it for you. It's just your family members that are there, and then you're working tirelessly to even bring them to join you. So is there any benefit in it for the rural areas?
For that, it's easy to focus on the urban areas getting more of the benefits, but I would say that for balance, it is possible that in some ways the rural areas do benefit, in the sense that people that have left the rural areas to the urban areas, by the time they are getting more successful, they are doing better for themselves. For those that are, philanthropic enough, for those that have their, their hometown at heart, some of them are able to, go back. They are more empowered, they have more capacity and more resources to go back, pushing money to actually develop those areas. And I would say that in many ways, many rural areas that have enjoyed some level of development is usually because of people who have gone to the urban areas. They've seen how, the cities look, and they have an idea. They have an idea of how they want to, develop where they're coming from. Then again, it's all individual. It's for some people, they never look back. For others, they think, how can I make where I'm coming from? How can I make it better? Because to be honest, not everyone can actually leave the rural areas. Many of our parents, many of our grandparents are still back there because some of them cannot even function in the cities. They are not comfortable enough to function in the cities. So some people are able to go back to their hometowns to say, what, how can I make my hometown better?
Okay, thank you for that, Gracious. Now, still talking about benefits and disadvantages, right? Let's look at the urban areas now. Do they benefit in any way from, massive urbanization? If we look at it critically, without the adequate resources, right, it becomes very difficult for the government of whatever state you're migrating to handle so much people. We're talking about unemployment on a daily basis, right? And we're seeing so much more people leaving their own areas to come join another state. How do you think the government will manage it? So that brings the question, is there more benefit for the urban areas than there is, challenges, or are these people do they just eventually become liabilities to the government? Ephraim?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. I can't say if there's more or less, but one thing is sure that when more people come in, you have a larger pool of skill to pick from, and human capacity for those that their skills are needed, or those that can offer something to the urban city. But then you see the side effects are so many that it might even downplay the benefits, because the housing becomes an issue. How many houses can you possibly create? You understand? So you see people, the prices of housing, skyrockets, and it leaves people paying through their noses to get a good place. And even the Lagos we are using as a case study, you can see how their water system is in, like Lekki, for instance, and even Lagos, many people are moving from the mainland to the island to try, hustle for opportunities, and it makes the place congested. It causes traffic to look for. Now, there are so many people to streets. Most people start to, commit crimes because of frustration and all of these issues. So I feel what the government could do to mitigate these issues is to also have a good transport system and a good housing system also in the rural areas close to the urban areas, because people could also come from there to have employment. And if they could improve the access of most of the things people are going to look for in the cities, that will also help, because the congestion is a big problem, increases crime rates and all of that. Like I said, the housing issues. So I feel from this analysis, the benefits are not as much as the problems that urbanization would cause for these cities, in my opinion.
All right, thank you so much for that, Ephraim, and thanks to you, lady and gentlemen, for being fantastic guests. Now, we'll go on a short break, and when we come back, this conversation is far from over because we still have a lot of angles to discuss it from. But right now, we'll go on a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue the conversation. Do stay with us. Thank you very much for staying with us on Fafanua Afrika. Now, we have been talking about the local Japa syndrome, which is urbanization, and my guests have been doing justice to these questions. Now, that said, I still have my guest with me, Eze Emmanuel, Brand Communications and Marketing Lead, Advancio Interactive Ltd, Nigeria. Thank you, Eze. We also have Gracious Akande, writer and editor in Nigeria. Thank you, Gracious. Thank you, Gracious, for being a gracious guest. I'm working on my dad jokes. But anyways, we also have Ephraim Isong, ESQ, Principal State Counsel, Ministry of Justice, Akwa State. Thank you, Ephraim. All right, with those introductions done, thank you. Let's go back to the conversation, right? And I'm bringing it back to Emmanuel now. Do the reasons for the youth not going back home have anything to do with the pressure associated with urbanization? Now, earlier I mentioned that when you go to a place, the people you left behind don't care the system in place there, the infrastructure or whatever. They just believe that, oh, you are there, you should make money. So does that have anything to do with the pressure? People just decide not to go back home because they will ask me why I have not made money.
Yeah, actually, so that has actually really contributed to a good number of reasons why people don't go back home. Outside the fact that, so sometimes Nigeria is a very special country, right? So the people who go once they've made it, going back, so a good number of people go back home, right? But at the same time, if you haven't made it to a certain level and then your family is still in a particular state, going back home it's like a show of shame. A number of people will look at you and say, oh, you spent this number of years in Lagos. I know so many people that say they can't go home yet until they're able to own a home or do something. But at the same time, I don't even have that mindset, right? If I feel like going home, I'm going to go home. But yes, I know there's a pressure. So there's a pressure for people in Lagos, and then there's also pressure in urban areas, and also pressure for people who are in rural areas. So what do I mean by that, right? So if you're in the rural area, if you have a friend who are in urban areas, they would also tell you, I know people who believe that if you're in urban, you can't be at the same pace. If you're in rural areas, your thinking is slow, your mindset, you're backward. A lot of people consider people in rural areas, to be backward thinkers, while those in urban cities to be forward thinkers, right? So, and that is somewhat true in Nigeria because the opportunities are not equitable. Development is also not equitable. You don't have, there are very few states that you can find good roads, right? So sometimes going back to rural areas, can be, it's not like you don't want to go back, right? But it's like you've gone so far ahead, you've seen development, and then you're still seeing more houses, right? So it's a major challenge, and I think it's something that the states need to work on, because I think it's actually becoming more like a pandemic also, because I remember there hasn't even been development in a state that I've been to growing up till date. I can't find one tangible. The roads are bad, no electricity for 30 years, right? And it's terrible. So you want to wonder why people move to urban areas. So yes, thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that, Emmanuel. Now, Gracious, I would also like to ask very quickly, how do you think that urbanization affects economic growth and development on a general scale, whether for the rural or the urban areas? I know you had mentioned something like that earlier. That's why I channeled this question back to you.
Okay. Okay, so the urbanization does affect the economic growth and development of a place, especially because the population obviously increases, which is human capital, and then that in turn also increases the GDP of that place for sure. The effect of urbanization on the rural area is more bad than good, to be very honest. It's more negative than positive, to be very honest. Usually it's the urban areas that actually enjoy more of the benefits because there's increased population, there's a rapid development in infrastructure, in just the general development of the area. So the roads are better, there are more schools being built, more facilities are provided to cater to the increased population. So usually the urban areas enjoy more benefits of urbanization than the rural areas. I hope that answers the question.
Oh yeah, it does. It really does. Thank you so much, Gracious. Well, now it's time for us to see reactions from social media. We're going to check out the Twitter boards to see what the tweeps are saying about urbanization. Let's take a look together. Now, Nina Kayoko says, we believe in digital skills of African youth. Students solve urbanization challenges with geospatial data and tech skills and grow into responsible citizens with improved employment opportunities. The next person, Precious C. Akan, says, urbanization in Africa is characterized by youth bulge in cities. While there are vices, urbanization can be a catalyst for sustainable economic and social development, just like Gracious said. If well planned and managed, that's another clause, and this is said by Tillman Felters. Now, John Mpaso says, tribal authority, councillor, the mayor, how well is this system working for rural areas? My question earlier. Now, the youth want urbanization of the villages to encompass basic services like water, sewer, provision of electricity and tarred roads. Will people in rural areas pay for these services? A very vital question if you ask me. Now, Annie says, today urban infrastructure is under severe stress. But soon the youth will look at urbanization as an opportunity. Well, according to one of the presidents. Well, those are the words from the tweeps on Twitter, the things they had to say about urbanization. I still have my guests with me, Emmanuel, I still have Gracious, and I have Ephraim. Thank you so much for still being with me, lady and gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right, so we're almost coming to a close, but there's still some areas that I would like for us to talk about. Now, Ephraim, I would like to ask, what lessons can we learn from the successful and the unsuccessful urbanization experiences across the globe? And I'm not talking about Africa now, other countries. I mean, Africa is not the only one that experiences urbanization. It cuts across every other country. So what lessons can we learn from the successful and the unsuccessful attempt at urbanization in these countries, and how can we implement them?
Okay, I think one of the things I'm going to say is that it's not where you are that makes you successful, but it's who you are. So many people have to look inward and look at who they are and what value they can give. Because now we have social media. Most people, your businesses, you don't need to physically be present in a particular area to prosper in your business. You can use social media and reach a global audience, even from your community. There's a recent movie where we saw the Ikorodu boys who were able to, be shooting in their own little ways. And now they've gone on to act, movies for Prime Video and Netflix movies and all of that. So you don't need to physically be present in some places to, do what you have to do. And for the successful ones, most of them, are people that move with planning, and they knew that maybe like the entertainment industry or maybe a particular, area of business needed them to be physically present in a geographical location. And they probably moved with a plan, even though most may say they stayed under the bridge or, however they, got to get comfortable in that city, but they had a plan. So the important thing is that if you're moving, even if you're moving outside the country, it's important to always move with a plan so that you don't, get frustrated. Because I spoke to someone recently who sold his house to relocate to UK, and he told me that he wants to come back to Nigeria because it wasn't as rosy as he thought it was going to be. So I think those are some of the lessons that we can learn. It's not about where you are, but it's about the value you can offer.
Very valid point. Thank you so much for that, Ephraim. Now, I would also like to ask Emmanuel, if you were to prefer a solution that will ensure that urbanization is sustainable and equitable? Having said all these things that we've been discussing, what would that solution be?
So I would just like to say that it's important that government actually have plans for, because one of the reasons why we see a surge in urbanization is because development and opportunities are focused in a particular city, right? So it's important that government actually spread development and opportunities. Don't just situate economic hubs in only a particular area where there are no jobs, and you expect people who are just agrarian, just farming, nothing, no industries in their society. They'll keep moving. And then the challenge with, urbanization that is not planned. For example, Lagos is not meant to house more than the people that is currently have. I think Lagos has about 20 million people currently. And then Lagos was built for, I think, about 2 million people. So Lagos is currently overpopulated. So the government is trying to expand. And then the infrastructures are stretched because there are too many people coming in. That's why you find a number of areas littered, because you don't have enough toilets, you don't have enough waterways to cater for this number of people, right? So I think that government of different, let's using Nigeria as as the case study, right? The Nigerian government actually has to prioritize development across. There are about just 5 states that, if you ask anybody, they don't move to. Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, Anambra, maybe Enugu. So these are places where people want to move to. Other areas, 70% of them are farmers because there are no industries. You don't even have banks. There was a state I served in. You have just 2 banks in a big city. Compared to Lagos, where you can find banks. If you're stranded in a rural area in Nigeria, you need to come to Lagos to resolve your banking issues. So I think that government should actually spread development, spread industrialization across different. So they should prioritize. And I think when governments do not prioritize opportunities development and even human capital development, this is the challenge that you have. You now see people moving and then stressing the few areas that have been developed. So I just think that government needs to plan more, plan for cities better, not just focus on urban areas where you make money, also consider people who are in rural areas, because if you do not take care of the people who are also in the rural areas, they're going to cause a problem for you in the urban areas. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much for that. Also, I think this is the final question. Ephraim, how do you think that we can reduce the negative impact of rapid urbanization? Ephraim, are you there?
How we can reduce the... Yes. One of the ways we can reduce the negative impact of, rapid urbanization is just like the last speaker said, it has to be, planned, and these facilities, has to be spread across. And then just, improving the transportation system is a very big deal, because if there's like a train system for instance, I live in Akwa Ibom right now, I'm working in Uyo. If there's a train system from Cross River State, Calabar to Uyo, some people can live in Calabar and, work in Uyo. So it helps to, mitigate the housing issues and all of that. And if we can also, improve the facilities, like we said, the internet supply, electricity supply. And someone was asking, I think one of the tweets said, how will these people pay for it? There are different ways that, electricity can be generated through, renewable energy, using things like wind turbines and bio waste, and even hydropower. So it's just to look at different societies and look at, the best way, and you can generate power for them and improve their facilities. That will help people to, be able to earn a living and be comfortable in where they are. So, and I think that's one of the ways that we can, improve the or mitigate the effects of, urbanization.
Okay, thanks for that. I would also like for us to talk about the rural areas. Now, like they said, if your house is in order, you won't want to look into another person's house. We've talked extensively about the things we can do for the urban areas and, to ease the stress and the impact of urbanization. But don't we think that if the rural areas are thoroughly worked upon, people will not necessarily want to move to urban areas? I know that it sounds very difficult, but I would like to get all your takes on it. So I'll start with you, Gracious. What do you think?
Okay, so when you asked the question, the first thing that just came to my mind is beyond the government, right? What can we do as a people, right? The same way urbanization came to be, the same way people, trooped from the rural area to the urban area. It came from a mindset. It came from a story that was told, like I said, testimonials. They'll go to this place, you succeed there. It's the same way you have to start to recondition our minds and start to tell ourselves, just like I think it was Ephraim or Emmanuel that said that you can actually succeed anywhere. So by the time we have to start to tell ourselves the truth, and with the help of technology and new media and social media, we realize that those that are working remotely, for instance, what are you doing in Lagos? You can actually just go back. For someone like me, I'm really considering just moving to somewhere more quiet. Many people are starting to see how mentally draining and how stressful it is to live in these overpopulated areas, and people are beginning to crave some sense of normalcy and sanity. And so when more people begin to shift to that idea and begin to see that, okay, it's not actually so terrible. Living in Ibadan is not all that bad. Living in Osun State is not all that bad. You can actually move around. Of course, with the ease of transportation, with those things in place, it will be easier to move around, and you don't have to actively just be stationed in one position. So that's also another way that we can reduce the effect of urbanization.
Okay, Emmanuel, your thoughts?
Okay, for me, I would just like to say that most urban areas were once rural areas, right? Yeah. So I just think that government needs to be, so the same way they were intentional about building these urban areas, turning, bungalows to skyscrapers, to story buildings, we also need to find something to develop in the rural areas. Quite a number of them are farmers. You can make them contribute to the larger food supply chain within Nigeria for export. Find a way to plug them in so that they also believe that they are contributing to the larger economy, right? So if the government is intentional and sees opportunities there, they should. I think I don't think there's any area that does not have an opportunity, right? The government just needs to be intentional about their plans. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks for that. Finally, Ephraim, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, from what both speakers just said, I was just thinking to myself, like, if Nigeria would practice true federalism in the sense that the states learn to generate their own, GDP and be self-sustainable, that will help the state government to start looking at their rural areas and to see what they can generate, through agriculture and through other resources that they might have. And that will help them to actually improve these areas, because, every area is peculiar. Every rural area has something. Even the fruits like, let's say, tamarind or ginger or whatever grows there are useful abroad. So just like he said, if they could look inward and if we practice federalism, that will make it easy. Everybody will have no options, more capital, and that will help them to go look at the different rural areas and see the best they can, make of it. I think that would be a good way to start.
All right. Well, we have come, unfortunately, because I didn't want this conversation to end, but unfortunately, we have come to the end of this conversation. And I really want to thank my guest. First of all, I want to thank Eze Emmanuel for being here. Eze Emmanuel is a brand communications and marketing lead, Advancio Interactive Ltd, Nigeria. Thank you, Eze Emmanuel, for joining us. And we're looking forward to having more of you again on this show.
Definitely.
We also have gracious Akande, the writer and editor, the beautiful lady. Permit me to be partial. I mean, is what we do. Thank you, gracious, for joining us. All right, and we also had Ephraim. See me, I wanted to call Emmanuel twice. Wow. We also had Ephraim Isong, ESQ, a Principal State Counsel, Ministry of Justice, Akwa Ibom State. Thank you so much, Ephraim, for giving us your thoughts on these issues and for joining us on the show. It's a pleasure.